Welcome to the Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
I'm your co-host, Rich Geary, with you, and kind of excited about tonight, Doug. We have a good show. I think interesting because I love history, and this is some of the as far as for evolution and creation. We're going to start out with talking about the Fuegians and Captain FitzRoy, who was the captain on the HMS Beagle that Darwin was on in, 1830, what was it, 18...
Yeah, I think it was like a 5-year voyage.
Yeah.
That they talked, it was like from 1830 to 1836, something like that. And
so you're talking about we're talking about South America, way in the southern tip of South America.
The southern tip of Cape Horn. And,
yep.
And so it's kind of near Antarctica, and there's two articles in this magazine called Creation Matters. This is put out by the Creation Research Society, and the first article is called Darwin, Gardner, and the Fuegians, and the second one is Robert FitzRoy, a creationist and leading scientist, by Jerry Bergman. Dave Wessel is one of my favorite creationists because he just likes to collect a lot of stuff. He
gets a lot of very different kinds of things. Yeah, he does, and this is another interesting article that he's written here. So, well, Doug, where do we want to start? I guess we should start probably with the Voyage of the Beagle or the things that was going on there. Or I mean, Captain FitzRoy. He did quite a bit of stuff in his life, but at this point in time, he was the captain of this ship. So, and this
was in 1826. So
right.
And the Beagle visited this area. I guess the Falkland Islands was like a base for Britain at that time, and they wanted to do a hydrographic study of the area,
right,
and map out how it all works in that area. And FitzRoy was sort of a weather. He invented weather forecasting.
He called them forecasts, actually. Yes.
And so one of the things that happened was that they met up with some of the natives in the area. It's called the Fuegians, and in 1826 they brought back 4 of them to England.
That would be interesting because it's later on what happened, as you're going to go into a little bit. You go, how did they get these 4? But in one of them, they kind of they christened him Jeremy Button or
Jemmy Button.
Jemmy Button, that's what it was. And there's a picture in the article where he's kind of dressed up in an English garb, but when he starts out, he's all kind of basically primitive, what you would call primitive savages, what they would have called back in the day. Pretty wild, you know?
And the Fuegian tribe has made a lasting negative impression on Darwin. And this is what he wrote about them. He said, "These poor wretches were stunted in their growth, their hideous faces bedaubed with white paint, their skins filthy and greasy, their hair entangled, their voices discordant, their gestures violent and without dignity. Viewing such men, one can hardly make oneself believe that they are fellow creatures, and inhabitants of the same world. It is a common subject to conjecture what pleasure in life some of these less gifted animals can enjoy. How much more reasonably the same question be asked with respect to these barbarians."
I know. What's interesting is they obviously must have dressed him up fairly and cleaned him up a bit. That still didn't impress Darwin, because when they went back to they actually returned them back to their native village, and they returned to their old savage ways, or their old wild ways.
After spending all this time in England and learning all the culture and everything, they concluded, Darwin concluded, these guys must be missing
links. Yep.
And so he ranked the Fuegians as amongst the lowest barbarians that there were.
Absolutely. So anyway, so that's the start of this scenario here. But very soon afterward, a few years later, there's a missionary, and I tell you, this man's a hero. I was reading his quotes, and his name is Alan Gardner. And so, Doug, tell us a little bit about Alan Gardner. He was a fascinating character.
He was called early by God to reach the Indian tribes in South America, and he ministered in the Andes first for a while, but those evangelistic efforts sort of failed. They didn't get much success. And he learned about the Fuegian tribes from the Voyage of the Beagle, and so what he tried to do is that there were 4 of them, but the only one they could locate was Jimmy Button.
Jimmy Button, yeah.
But he tried to find him to help in translation of the Bible. Yeah, but what happened was that they were in a boat and they landed on the island nearby. It's called Picton Island, and they forgot a stock of gunpowder, so they were defenseless.
Pretty much.
And the Fuegians, they became hostile and sort of drove them off. And finally, they ended up on another island. This was right near.
Well, they kept getting chased by these guys.
Right.
They kept going after them to try to get them. They wanted to steal all their stuff, first of all. And what's interesting is this is what maybe 10 years after the Beagle operation. I'm not sure exactly the time, but not maybe 1840s, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, he died in 1851, and that's the ultimate. What happened was that they chased him to an island, and the weather started to get cold. It's down by Antarctica. And so they finally, all of these missionaries, he met up with 3 different fishermen who were Christians, and they joined him in his mission, but they all died of hunger, cold, and sickness in that spot. So,
but the thing what gets me about it is his journals, because they later on they found his diaries and the writing he had. Unlike our modern, most of us modern Christians in America and so as well do not have something about these missionaries these days. Doug, really impressed me. An incredible amount that the heroes that these people were. But he basically is writing that don't think that I'm sad. I'm full of more joy than he's ever had. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it was an incredible response to incredible privations and terrible conditions, and that he was not able to success. In the Andes, he wasn't that successful. Here, he wasn't successful. Yet he felt joy unspeakable that he was able to do what he did. And I don't know, you want to read a little quote there?
I'm going to read his.
It's amazing.
His story here. This is taken from his journal that he kept while he was in the cave, dying of starvation. And so it says this. These are his remarkable words shortly before he passed away. He says, "Should anything prevent my ever adding to this, let all my beloved ones at home rest assured that I was happy beyond all expression the night I wrote these lines. I would not have changed situations with any man living. Let them also be assured that my hopes were full and blooming with immortality, that heaven and love and Christ, which mean one and the same divine thing, which were in my heart, that the hope of glory, the hope laid up for me in heaven, filled my whole heart with joy and gladness, and that to me to live is Christ, to die is gain. I am in a strait betwixt the two, to abide in the body or to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. I am happy day and night, hour by hour, asleep or awake. I am happy beyond the poor compass of language to tell. My joys are with him, whose delights are always been with the sons of men. And my heart and my spirit are in heaven with the blessed. I have felt how holy is that company. I have felt how pure are their affections. And I have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. And I ask my Lord for the white garment, that I too may mingle with the blaze of the day and be amongst them ones of the sons of light. And much more could I add, but my fingers are aching with cold. I must wrap them up in my clothes. But my heart is warmed with praise, thanksgiving, and love to my Father, and love to my God, my Redeemer."
This is something that Darwinian evolution can never give you. Hope beyond expression, almost. But those are heroic words, Doug. It's just. But he wanted to have didn't he propose a missionary society or?
Right. He proposed that there be a Patagonian missionary society, and then his vision expanded to South American Missionary Society.
Yeah. We're from Michigan.
And so that was called Sam's, and so then when the news of the deaths of these missionaries reached England, the London Times sort of castigated, had a critical article about it, said decrying loss of life and resources for so foolish a cause. And however, the story of the missionaries' death caught the attention of the nation. And it turned out that Gardner's journal became a bestseller.
Yeah.
And so that he went into the, and so actually it just spurred, motivated 8 more missionaries to contact the Fuegians.
Right.
And so these were some people from the Falkland Islands, and they had actually taken some time to learn the language and.
Yeah, they were actually in better shape. They were trying to find. Were they looking for Jeremy Button as well? I'm kind of trying to remember if they did, but
Jimmy Button.
Jimmy, I keep saying Jeremy, but Jimmy, yeah. But anyway, he was very jealous and angry. They they actually located him, but they attacked these missionaries
and killed them all.
Killed them all. Attacked them, speared them to death.
Yeah.
But there was one survivor, a cook, right?
And the cook stayed behind on the ship, and so he managed to survive. And so here you have 2 different missionary teams that went to reach this lost tribe, and 15 of them were dead.
Yep. Not very successful so far. It doesn't sound good, right? But that's not, now, quote the old Paul Harvey story, now the rest of the story.
The rest of the story.
Yep.
There was a third fellow, and his name was Thomas Bridges, and he was 17 years old.
And wasn't he an orphan? Was he the one that was an orphan?
He was an orphan.
And a guy took him in as a child, but he became very much enamored of this whole thing. But he was stationed at the Falklands. But and then what? They left to go home, and he volunteered to stay behind or something.
Yeah,
or what?
he decided he was going to carry on with it, and it turned out that he had learned enough of the language that the Fuegians allowed him into his settlements, and they were moved by his kindness and forgiveness that he showed, and so ultimately nearly the entire Fuegian tribe turned to Christ.
And it turned out the language that, I know we didn't talk about this much, but Darwin thought they were lucky they had 100 words or something very low.
Right, yeah.
They had over 32,000 words. Their language is actually much more complex and precise than the English language.
Yeah.
So much for Darwin's theory. The other part of the thing is, go ahead.
He authored a Yagan English dictionary. The Yagan was
that's the name of the language, right? Yagan? Yeah. Yaghan.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Bridges actually won a lot of honor because of his mission. His effects made such a impact on this tribe that they struck a medal in his honor for the King of Italy. And here's the real ironic thing is that Darwin himself was so impressed with this that he became a financial supporter of the Sam's Missionary Society for the rest of his life.
Darwin was a very oxymoronic character sometimes. I mean, he basically would support a missionary society, and he himself was moving more and more into agnosticism and atheism. And pretty much, there's been lots of things written about a lot of his physical ailments, and even some of his aesthetic senses became dulled as he became more and more evolutionary. I was reading a book by Jerry Bergman, and he's quoting, I can't think of the author's name, Houghton, something like that, or maybe it doesn't really matter. But his own words were that he thinks he took pleasure in when he was younger, arts and poetry, and he didn't have any interest in it at all as he became more and more mechanistic. Yet saying that, he remained fairly genteel and civilized, and would support a missionary group. I just think, Doug, that's a very interesting thing about him. I don't really understand quite But I guess it's the nature of human beings. We're not always consistent, are we, Doug?
We aren't.
In this case, I guess I'm glad that he wasn't consistent because he put money towards that, and Darwin was not he had money, he did. So, anyway, so Doug, what are some of the lessons we can learn out of this,
Well, first of all, the example that Darwin showed, the gardener, I had Darwin on the mind.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I did that to him.
The gardener's death that showed Christendom, the death of Christian joy, is possible in the midst of fruitless service.
We read about, obviously, read the New Testament, Paul in the middle of his prison, and he doesn't break out. He's singing hymns, and right in the middle, he's ready to be executed, and all these, and you think, well, that's the Bible. This is the 1850s when this was going on.
1850s.
Yeah. Anyway, but these missionaries, the testimonies of these missionaries are incredible, Doug. I've read many different accounts of different people going to different places, many of them through hardships and pain and stuff. Even one of the most famous ones, Stanley, Dr. Livingston, I guess, Stanley, the newspaper guy, that whole thing, Dr. Livingston, I presume.
Albert Schweitzer and some of the later ones, but you had Hudson Taylor and these other
amazing stuff.
Went into and did some radical changes in these countries where they went. And then when the missionaries, the 8 missionaries that went the second time, got murdered, what this allowed Thomas Bridges to do is to show the radical nature of God's forgiveness. Because even though they were murdered, his peers were murdered, he was able to show kindness to the Fuegians and to persist in his effort to reach them for Christ.
The article is very good because it points out this thing says, without the storm at sea, the Fuegian Christians couldn't have shown the world God's rescuing love that had taken up residence in their hearts. He could not have done that without the storm. It would not have happened because there was a storm that got them. I mean, because that's another aspect of the thing which they were given a medal because there was some people that were coming out there. And the Fuegians, after they had converted to Christ, had gone out to rescue these people.
Right.
And rather than the way the Fuegians were before conversion, who were killing people coming to them, they went out to help people who were in dire straits.
Right.
They were in very bad place, and that's an amazing testimony, Doug. That's a real conversion. When you see conversion is about the confession of the mouth, but it's also what you do and what happens out of your heart. What do you do with your hands? What happens?
Yeah, and then finally, when things go wrong, we are tempted to think God failed us, but God brought about fruit of a more enduring quality with adversity.
And this is the other thing, Doug, is when people say, how can good things happen to bad people, or bad things happen to good people, and all this. So I said, we talked about the fall of man, but the fact of the matter is, we see through a glass darkly. We see through a small lens. We don't see the big picture, but also, death is not the final stage of it. We've been so accustomed, even in America, the Christian America, which has become much more secular thanks to a lot of leadership, but the fact of the matter is, even in America, we fail because of we've had wealth and physical ease and comfort and all this. We tend to understand there's a greater picture, that no matter how long you live in this life, you're still going to die. And if you die earlier than you wanted to what did he say? To live is Christ, but to die is gain.
Right.
But to live, you live for Christ. If you did live,
And you really don't have a testimony unless there's a test.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so the more adverse the circumstances, the more powerful the testimony is. And this is indeed a complete demonstration of the grace of God and how.
What I admire, Doug, is that the first guy, even though he didn't get to see the entire picture, which we get to, he was still full of joy. It's kind of like the prophets talked about in the Old Testament. They looked for the day when Christ would be revealed. Well, Doug, speaking of the captain of the Beagle, which we haven't for a while, but Robert FitzRoy, he was on that original thing. And it turns out, Doug, he was a creationist himself, was he not?
Well, he sort of became one during the time.
So he went the opposite way that Charles did.
And one of the things is that he did actually give Darwin Lyell's book.
Yeah, that's what I remember reading about.
And I said, I guess it was something that he was thinking about, but I think after that voyage was when he got married, and the lady he married was someone that actually brought him to Christ.
So this was later that this happened.
Right.
Because was he a governor, or, I mean, where did he, I don't know.
Yeah, he was, first of all, the captain of the Beagle,
right.
And I think he was a little bit lower rank, and then also he was a surveyor, he was a hydrographer, a meteorologist, and he actually developed the science of weather forecasting.
Right.
And then also he was a humanitarian, governor of New Zealand.
Governor of New Zealand, that's right, yeah. Okay.
And he attempted to protect the Maori from illegal land seizures by British settlers. So he had a lot of compassion for the.
I think it's fascinating considering what we read again. Jerry Bergman about the people of the island in Tasmania who were actually cut into extinction by Darwinian thinking. Okay, and here he's in Maori down in New Zealand. He's protecting them. Interesting perspective, Doug. The fruits of each philosophy.
Right.
One is death and pointlessness and futility. The other is hope and joy, even in the midst of adversity. I think that's a big deal.
Right.
You know.
The HMS Beagle completed a hydrographic survey, like I said, of Tierra del Fuego. Then they returned to England in 1830, and there was quite an interesting relationship with FitzRoy and Darwin. FitzRoy married a devout Christian woman, and he became a Christian under her influence. And he felt let down by Darwin when Darwin reviewed his writings. He had a surveying Voyage of the Beagle.
Okay.
And so Darwin sort of left him out of the picture as being important or something like that. And so he was saying, well, Darwin is sort of being self-centered here.
Well, Darwin was very self-centered, and if there's some evidence that a lot of his thing, well, you can think about it, Doug. I mean, when Wallace came up and his theory was possibly going to compete with his, he rushed to publicize it. A lot of it was about getting fame and getting notoriety and recognition. You know, he was I think he was kind of an arrogant guy, you know.
FitzRoy viewed Lyell's geology as contradicting the scriptures and the literal meaning of the Bible.
And yet he's the one that gave Darwin
well, like I said...
he wasn't a believer then.
He wasn't... he was sort of searching then, too.
Okay.
And then when the Origin of Species was published, he was really thrown into a lot of inner turmoil because he sort of felt guilty for his part in the theory's development.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
And so, at the same time that Samuel Wilberforce attacked Darwin's theory in the famous debate that he had, FitzRoy presented a paper on British storms at the same time. And so, he was hearing this debate going on, and he sort of felt responsible in part for unleashing this whole evil upon the world.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's a part of the story I was I'm not aware of. So he was in England at the time the Wilberforce debate's going. Yeah, we got to talk about that sometime, Doug. That's time for another show. But anyway, so
I'd like to dig out the archives of what those debates were all about.
That would be nice because I hear Wilberforce. The way the public persona, if you hear about it, it always makes him look like he lost the debate. And I think that's due to Huxley's promotion. But people who were there often, that's not the way it went.
Right.
It was not that way. But we'll have to do some research on that. But anyway, back to FitzRoy. Anything?
Yeah, he was eventually appointed vice admiral, and he received many awards and honors for his work. and appointed chief of the meteorological office, collecting weather data.
Okay.
So he became the weatherman of the time. You know?
Quite well known, yep. Okay.
Now he died in 1863, and I think that he was a little bit depressed at the time because I think he took his own life.
FitzRoy did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Oh, that's horrible. Oh, wow. I'd say because he died. That's a lot earlier than Charles Darwin, 1889. But he. Oh boy. Did you get anything? Any reason? Did they have any reason why that happened? You said just depression.
Well, like I said, he felt responsible in part for unleashing the evil on the earth. You know?
Oh boy.
Because he could see the effects of Darwinism already, how it was sort of taking over the philosophy of the time. Because Karl Marx rose up, and a lot of these Huxley and these other people.
Nietzsche came and they all dedicated their nihilistic, horrible, philosophies on the earth, and they all wanted to dedicate to Darwin.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Darwin publishes The Origin of Species in 1859, and I remember I've got a book back home that I guess it belonged to my great-great-grandfather, published in 1861, and it's called Wilson's Fifth Reader, and it has pretty much a lot of all the different subjects you get taught in school. And there was one on geology, and I remember it talking about the day-age theory and the gap theory.
Yeah, that early,
and they were trying to deal with Darwin's ideas and compromise.
It just took the world by storm. That the world was ready to reject Christianity, and that's what happened. The world changed. It had been moving that way for probably 50, 60 years. I mean, but
you've had people like Voltaire earlier, and who were deists and atheists. They're trying to get rid of God in a number of ways.
The Enlightenment was really, I call it the
They were trying to get rid of the royal system.
Well, that was one part. Yeah, one big aspect. The
divine right of kings.
Yeah, trying to get rid of that.
And so that was the reason why a lot of people were attacking the Bible, because they thought the Bible gave them a divine right of kings. Well, it really doesn't.
It really doesn't, but that's what that was used for centuries, Doug, to substantiate authority and delegated authority from God to kings and popes down, and the peons were just, and that was the right, but it was predicated on a false understanding of the scriptures. But that aside, there was a whole world ready in Lyell's theory, 1836. Wasn't that when his book came out, something like that? 1830s anyway, and that was already given to maybe 1826. I get those a little bit mixed up, but he gave Lyell's book because Lyell was given to Darwin on the Beagle. Okay.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our.
We run out of time. Okay, I guess so. Yeah.
Departure into history. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.